Hello and welcome to Adobe Photoshop and today's tutorial on how to create the matrix text effect. And I'm going to be using version CS2. I'm going to go right ahead and take a look at the effect we're trying to create here. And this one is one that I finished a little bit earlier today. And you can see that we've got a black background with the matrix style green falling code and my own text in front of that. And that's what we're going to try and recreate inside the next 10 minutes. So I'm going to start off here with opening a new document. I'm going to do that by hitting Control N on the keyboard, and I'm going to call it Matrix Effect, and I'm going to select a preset down here of 640 by 480, and you may just want to make sure that all your other settings are in line with mine, and once you're done, click OK. Now I'm going to view this at 75% so we can see what's going on. And I'm just going to readjust it on screen here so we can see exactly what's happening on screen, and that's just about right. Now the first thing we need to do is to set the background to black, and we'll do that by making sure our foreground colour is set to black, and if it's not, you can press the letter D on the keyboard to reset it, and then press Alt Delete on the keyboard to fill the layer with black. Next we need to select a colour to use, and if I go ahead and open up the swatches palette, you can see that I've already got a swatch that I saved earlier, which I'm going to click to load as my foreground colour. And if you wanted to use the same colour as I am, you'll need to use a value of 11 for red, 143 for green, and 23 for blue. Okay, so far so good. Now we need to create a backdrop of random code. Now the easiest way of doing this is to go to a text editor such as Notepad that ships with Windows, or Word that comes along with Microsoft Office, and open up an image file that the software doesn't support, and that will create a random mess of letters, numbers and symbols that's perfect for this tutorial. Okay, so I'm going to open up Windows Notepad, and I'm going to go to Format first of all and make sure that Word Wrap is ticked. Next I'm going to go to File, Open. I'm going to make sure that where it says Files of Type, I have all files selected. Now I'm going to open up this small JPEG image, and because Notepad can't read this particular file format, it's given me all these weird characters that I want for my effect. Now I'm going to highlight a whole heap of them, and it's better to have too many than not enough. And once I've done that, I'm going to hit Control C on the keyboard to copy, and then make my way back into Photoshop, and I'm going to grab the text tool, and I'm going to change the text size to 6 points, and I'm going to use a font called Lithos Pro, but any computer-like font will do for this part of the effect. And I'm going to position the cursor in the top right hand side of the image, and then come up here to the text orientation icon and click to change our horizontal text to vertical. Finally I'm going to hit Control V on the keyboard to paste all of the characters into the image. Now if I scroll out a little bit, I get to see all the text that I've created or copied into Photoshop, and I can now select my Move tool from the Tools palette over here and move it about until I get it something like this. Okay, now I'm going to double left click on the name of the layer and call it 6PTS so we know which layer this is, and then I'm going to drag the layer down to the new layer icon to duplicate the layer, and I'm going to do it again to give us 3 text layers in total. And now I'm going to change the name of the first new text layer to 9PTS, and then change the name of the remaining text layer to 12PTS. Now we're going to do what the names suggest, so I'd like you to turn off the 6 and 12 PTS layers, and by clicking, I should say, these respective eyeballs here in the layers palette, and then selecting the layer called 9 PTS, and then scrolling out a little until we can see all of the text that we have on the screen. You'll then need to select your text tool by pressing T on the keyboard, and then double left click the layer icon over here to select all the text in the layer, and then change the font size to 9 PTS. Okay, as we did before, select your move tool and then move the text block until you're happy with the position, and I'm just going to leave mine around there. That's about right. So now we'll need to press the eyeball to make that layer invisible and turn on the visibility of the layer called 12 PTS. Now we're going to do the same thing with this layer as we did to the last. So with the layer active, you need to grab your text tool, and this time we can hit Ctrl A to select all the text on the layer. Same result as clicking and dragging, but just another way of doing things here inside of Photoshop. Now this time we need to change the font size to 12 points, then select the move tool and move the text into position as we did before. Okay, that looks about right. Next we're going to turn on all the eyeballs so we can see all the layers. Not looking great at the moment, I'll admit, but we haven't finished yet, so bear with us. Now we need to select the 6 PTS layer and go down to the layer mask icon at the bottom of the layers palette and click it to add a layer mask to our layer. Next we need to make sure the layer mask is selected, and then hit D on the keyboard to ensure we're using our default background and foreground colours, and then go up to Filter, Render and Clouds. Now we need to do exactly the same to the other two text layers, so select the layer called 9 PTS and click the layer mask icon, make sure it's selected, and hit Ctrl F on the keyboard to use the last applied filter, which is of course the clouds filter. And finally add another layer mask to the layer entitled 12 PTS and hit Ctrl F once again to add the clouds filter. Now with 12 PTS as our active layer, let's change the blending mode to color dodge, and we'll do exactly the same thing to the 9 PTS layer, and there we have it. Okay, next we need to select our 12 PTS layer and add an adjustment layer by clicking this icon down here at the bottom of the layers palette and selecting brightness contrast. You can set this to whatever you choose, but I'm going to set mine to around +30 for both the brightness and contrast values, and then I'm going to click OK. Next we need to select the 6 PTS type layer, and with the type not the mask selected, we're going to go to Layer and Rasterize and then Type. Now we can add a slight blur to this now, as it's pixel based information rather than vector based after we've rasterized it, and I'm going to add the blur by going to Filter, Blur and Gaussian Blur and selecting a value of something like 0.5 pixels and hitting OK to apply the blur. You could also, if you wanted to, apply a motion blur from the same blur menu, which obviously would give the effect that the code is in fact falling down the screen. But for purposes of illustration, this backdrop is good enough for me, so we need to go about creating the main text for the image now. So first of all, I'd like you to go to the layers palette over here and click and drag all of the eyeballs except the black fill layer to turn them off. And now hit Ctrl Shift N to create a new layer, and we can call it main text and click OK. Now if you hit the T key to switch to the text tool and click the foreground color so we can change the text color to white, make sure you've got the hue selected in the color picker, and we'll probably get the best results by keeping a slight tinge of green to the color. and then clicking OK. Now if we click inside the image and just toggle the orientation switch to ensure we're going to be typing horizontally this time, and now I've got two fonts on my system that you probably won't have. One's called Milltown and the other's called Matrix, and they're both available to download as freeware, i.e. completely free of charge, from the website I've just loaded onto my screen here. And if you have problems downloading from there, then just do a Google or Yahoo search for Matrix fonts and install them via your Windows control panel, assuming that you're using Windows on a PC, of course. So I'm going to go ahead and select a font, and I'm going to select Milltown on this occasion, and once I've done that, I'm going to select a font size of around 30 points. That should do it. And I'm just going to write my text now on the screen, and once I'm done there, I'm going to select my move tool to position it where I'd like it inside my image. And finally, I'm going to finish it off with a couple of layer effects. So double left click on the area next to the layer name and we'll bring up our layer style palette. And I'm going to select an outer glow here and then change the colour of the glow to match our text. So we'll enter a value of 11 for red, 143 for green, and 23 for blue, and click OK. Now we'll set the spread value at 14% and the size of the glow at 15 pixels, and then click OK. Now if you decide the colour isn't quite right, all you'll need to do is to add a hue saturation adjustment layer, making sure that the colorize box is ticked inside the dialog box itself, and then play around with the colours in there. And because this is an adjustment layer, it's going to affect all of the layers below it, something that's worth keeping in mind, that you'll affect the whole image by applying the adjustment layer above any of the layers inside of your original image. Okay, well before we call it a day here in Photoshop, I'm going to show you a quick method of creating that random code we've got in the background. Just perhaps an easier method of doing it, but in my opinion the effect isn't quite so realistic to what the matrix effect should be. I'm going to open up a new document, and it's a document that I opened up shortly before starting this tutorial. It's basically just a black fill in there, and I'm going to go to Filter, I'm going to go to Texture, and then Grain, and that'll open up my filter library here, or my filter gallery, and I can just about get it on screen in its smallest format, and you can see that we've got the matrix style grainy falling effect here in the screen. And over here we can change the settings, if you can see that on your screen. I'm going to go to the grain type and just make sure that's on vertical, and then set an intensity and contrast as you like. I've set mine to 82 and 55. I'm going to click OK, and then I'm going to go to Filter, Artistic, and Neon Glow. Now you won't actually see a neon glow here, but you will see it a bit later on. I'm going to make sure that the glow size and the glow brightness are fairly high. They don't have to be right the way at the top there, but they should be fairly high. Click OK in there, and then once again go to Filter and Stylize, and this time we need to go to Glowing Edges, and we're going to set a glow to our grain effect here. And again, we don't have to set a very high value, just a small touch of some of these controls can make a lot of difference. And I'm going to bring some of these effects down to perhaps their lower levels. That looks about right. I've got a value of 2, 2 and 2 here in each of the boxes, and click OK once again. Now I'm going to add the colour, so I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation, and bring the dialog box on screen so you can see it. Click Colorize, and then looking at the effect in the background, I'm going to make sure that the hue is giving me a matrix style green colour. And I'm just going to bring the saturation up a little bit as well, and that looks about right. Here I've got a hue of 101, a saturation of 39. I'm going to bring the lightness up to about 3, just to give the blackness a green tinge, as everything has in the matrix. I'm going to click OK, and there we have our green falling code. It's not actually letters this time, but it is a very effective way of creating this particular effect. And if you wanted just to finish it off like we did before with the letters, we could go to blur and motion blur. I'm just going to accept this as is, so I'm going to click OK, and there we have it. Okay, I'm going to cancel out of here and make sure I'm zoomed out at 75% so we can see the finished effect. Well, I hope you found this tutorial helpful. Thanks very much for watching.